Mercedes MONE now has 12 belts to her name. And it seems like there's more to come. We're going to talk about it and more. This is WrstlXtra. Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my tag team partner, the visionary, the oracle. Say his name, he shall appear. How many more things can I say? But it is the Professor Gerard Bonner. My guy, how are you doing? I know you had a busy weekend. I know you're going to talk about it a little bit more, but just give me just a little snippet of the experience of Arshay close to midnight.
Yeah, we will get into specifics, but I will say it was a very special show. Lots of history made from the first time the X Division Championship was defended there to the crowning of brand new tag team champions to a very controversial main event. Arshay was something special. We'll get into that before the end of today's show.
It is nothing but controversial when Darius Carter is involved.
Exactly.
Jeez. But while Darius Carter is controversial, the other thing that seems to be controversial in the world of professional wrestling right now, of course, is Mercedes MONE, 12 belts, MONE, Ultimo MONE, as the trademark is seems to be a thing now, or going ahead, something along those lines. But at AEW Wrestle Dream, she defeated, oh my God, I forget. Why do I forget names so often?
Mina Shirakawa.
That was in my head, but I thought, is that right?
Yeah.
Mina Shirakawa. Yeah. And has also, of course, then won the interim Ring of Honor Women's TV Championship. And also collected more belts over that same weekend in Winnipeg, over in Denmark last week, I believe it was. It is constant. I'm going to run through the titles that this woman has. I think this might actually even be in order of her winning as well. Okay. I believe. So you've got, of course, the AEW TBS Championship. Also now the record holder of the longest reign of that championship, defeating one Jade Cargill of 508 days. MONE is currently on this day at 513 days. We've got the Rev Pro Undisputed British Women's Championship as well, which comes along with the Queen of Southside Championship as well. So that's 3 belts there. CMLL Women's Championship. We've got the European Wrestling Association, which she won in Austria. She won the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, of course, which comes with a belt as well. The Primetime Wrestling Championship, which she won in Poland. Bestia Women's Championship, which she won in Italy. I believe she won those two in the space of a week as well, I believe. Wow. Discovery Wrestling Women's Championship in Scotland. Recently, the Body Slam Women's Championship in Denmark. And of course, as I mentioned, the ROH Interim Women's Television Championship and the Winnipeg Pro Wrestling, which she won from TNA's Jodie Fret over the weekend as well. 12 belts. I believe of the 12, 3 of them probably, no, 2 of them, only 2 of them actually, are belts that she probably can't defend, that being the Owen Hart Women's tournament. And of course, the Queen of Southside, which comes with the Rev Pro Undisputed British Women's Championship as well. Interestingly enough, it seems as though there's another 3 in line before the end of the year. So we could see 15 belts, MONE. We saw at the end of Wrestle Dream, or the end of her match at least, she called out Chris Statlander before her match. And then Chris Statlander then, answered the call, interrupting her celebrations after she beat Mina Shirakawa. And then there's the possibility of her facing Saya Kamitani. I hope I said that right. Who holds the New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong and the World of Stardom Championships. There's a possibility they could meet at Wrestle Kingdom. It's all going on. It's all going on. But my question is this to you, Gerard. Do we have a dilemma on our hands in the sense of she has all these championships. The question is, how does she lose all these championships? What are your thoughts?
The last time we saw anything remotely close to this was FTR a few years ago when they held multiple tag team championships, and they ended up going on a bit of a downward spiral. It was almost like a house of cards, basically. One went, and so went the others. So how does this happen was your question. For one, it's going to have to happen. I mean, there's no way that she's going to hold on to at least 12 belts for the rest of her career. At some point, she's going to have to lose at least one of them. The question ultimately becomes, which one is the thread that unravels all of it? And that's the interesting question. I don't know if it's as much news if she loses a championship that is regional or just belongs to a smaller promotion, particularly if she's got her hands on, of course, the TBS championship, the CMLL World Championship, the Rev Pro Championship. She's got several titles that are well known throughout the world at this point. I think it would take probably losing one of them for anybody to go, whoa, okay, now the downward spiral begins. If she loses any of the other ones, I don't think it's going to hit as hard. And there's probably a whole nother conversation to be had in terms of what this 12 belts MONE means, given the companies that she's now representing. And I'm putting representing in air quotes for those who might be listening, because this is far from, the fighting champion, for instance, that you'd find with her holding the TBS championship or even the CMLL World Championship. So this gets interesting, but I think the linchpin comes with her losing one of those major championships. And I think that's where the unraveling begins.
Do you feel as though it has to be one of the bigger titles before the unraveling happens or whatever else? So, for example, if she does lose, say, for example, the Body Slam, which is from Denmark, if she loses that, does that create some kind of bad reaction from wrestling fans, or negative reaction, should I say, in the sense where, she's undefeated for over a year, I believe it is now. If she loses a title on the Indies, does it help her more for her to lose the TBS, for example, to a Mina Shirakawa, to a Julia Hart, someone like that, than it is to losing one of the regional titles to a regional star unknown by most of the world?
It's an interesting catch-22, right? Like, I mean, I've heard people making the argument, about why is she getting ready to fight Chris Statlander at this point when she could have took the belt off of Tony Storm, which is a whole nother conversation. I do think the conversation gets interesting when there is an indie star that can beat Mercedes. And to be honest, here's the thing. So while I think that the linchpin to start this unraveling is the losing of a major championship, I think the first indie star that beats her for a title is going to get a lot of press.
For sure.
Because the question now becomes, what has made this person so special that they could do what none of the others in the major promotions could do? So I think that's where it gets interesting. In terms of fan reaction, I mean, I don't think you're going to get any worse fan reaction than you have right now with her having 12 titles. I mean, that if anything, there might be a party, where they're going, oh, finally, she's human. She's lost one,
Yeah.
And I think it stands to, again, create more of an opportunity for the person or persons who actually defeats her for those championships than it does for her holding them. So, yeah, I think whoever wins it is going to get a lot of great press. But I do think that starts with, some major championship that she loses. I just wonder who's going to be the one that's deemed special enough to defeat Mercedes Moné. That's where I think the real challenge is, because at this point, and here's what's crazy, we don't even hear, outside of Jody Threat, which we just know because she's from TNA and it just happened, and Mina, of course, because that just happened. We can't name who the champions were that she defeated in these other promotions for these relatively smaller, and I put that in air quotes, of course, no disrespect to any of those promotions, but we don't know who those women were that she defeated. We just know she won another title, which I think is also telling. Like, I'm just surprised that it's not she defeated whomever, and we get a name. We haven't gotten names yet. So I think, again, it's going to do something special when whomever the name is defeats her for one of those championships.
And that makes for an interesting point as well, because even with all these titles that she's won, and most, obviously most of them have been this year, some towards, I think, the tail end of last year as well. She hasn't defended many of these titles at all. Rev Pro, definitely she has, I think, maybe twice at the most. Sim she's defended, that was recent as well. Yeah. But apart from that, it's a handful, probably literally hand as in 5 defenses of the indie titles that she holds. And I think that's the hard part for most people. And you said as well with the lack of star names that she's beaten as well. And I think that adds to the perplexed response from fans, as if to say, okay, you have all these belts, but what do they even mean? Do they really mean anything to most people and whatnot? It's just easy numbers, so to speak. It's kind of like, you put in your World Cup champions against a team that has never been to the World Cup ever, and winning 15-0, and it becomes some big thing. It's not. So while there is greatness in what she's doing, because the greatness comes from her appearing at these smaller promotions, and ticket sales go through the roof.
Sure.
And that's the best part. For me, I feel as though that is the goal. That is the main part. Yes, she's holding the championships, and there's an argument of it being an ego boost and her kind of making up for not being recognized enough during her WWE days and stuff like that. But it does create the problem of, but are you going to be in these places often? Are you actually then elevating that specific women's division? Or is that only going to happen when you lose? And there's an argument on both sides of the coin with that one. The next question is, it looks as though we're going to get a clash between her and Kris Statlander. Kris Statlander, of course, currently the AEW Women's World Champion. Does Mercedes Moné beat Kris Statlander?
Here's another great catch-22, right? Like, on one hand, there's no reason she shouldn't beat Kris Statlander. I mean, she's beat Kris Statlander multiple times in defense of the TBS championship. If she loses to Kris Statlander, the question becomes, well, can she really win the big one? Because now it would be her second consecutive loss for the AEW World Championship. If she beats Chris Statlander and becomes the AEW World Champion, then it's a question of, oh, she couldn't beat the real champion, that being Toni Storm. So again, I think we've got a catch-22 situation where, you know, you may have booked yourself into a corner here when it comes to Mercedes Moné. Is she really this indestructible, undefeatable kind of wrestler who's been given all these belts? And let me just, not given all these belts, who's won all these belts. But let me say this, right? And you made an interesting point about those who feel like, you know, this is very significant because of the recognition she did not get in WWE. I liken this to the recording artist who has won a ton of awards on the independent circuit. You got 15 trophies, but you still couldn't win the Grammy, right? You got, so you think that these 15, taking a picture with these 15 trophies is going to replace the fact that you don't have the one Grammy, which is the award you really want. It's the award that's recognized by the rest of the world. So for Mercedes Moné, and this is wild, think about this, to have all of these championships, really the only world championship of all of them is the CMLL World Championship. She's not the Ring of Honor World Champion. She's their TV champion. She's not the AEW World Champion. She's their TV champion. So with all of these championships, you only have one recognized world championship, and that being the CMLL World Championship, which, you know, is not really ranked that high in the pantheon of recognized women's world championships. There is, of course, the two titles in WWE. One could make the argue from a lineage perspective. There's the TNA Knockouts Championship, which should be in that same category. Of course, you got the AEW Women's World Championship. There is, of course, the IWGP Women's World Championship, which she held for a hot minute. You know, but certainly not during this 12 belts Moné run. So the bigger question to me is not how many belts does she have, but what's the significance of them? And how is it that you have 12 championships, but you don't have the world title? How do you have 12 awards from these indie companies and indie award shows, but you didn't win the Grammy yet? And I think that's the real question. When we talk about the greatness of Mercedes Moné, sure, oh boy, this is trouble. Sure, Charlotte Flair could have gone and won all, but she's got 13 world champions within the recognized largest wrestling company in the world. So Mercedes, the real question now is, it's not 12 belts Mercedes, it's when are you going to win the big one? So getting back to this Chris Statlander situation, if she doesn't beat Chris Statlander, all of this is for naught at this point, because you've proven you can win everybody's TV championship, secondary championship, you can be the big fish in the little pond, but you can't win the AEW Women's World Championship. That's the real story.
But I think, in my mind, the best option is for her to lose to Chris Statlander.
See, and this is the problem, because Statlander just winning that title should not be as much as, and we can go way back and say, truth be told, Willow Nightingale should have retained the TBS championship against Mercedes. We wouldn't have this problem if that happened, right? So now the question is, are we righting the wrong of Chris Statlander? Who Statlander arguably gave Mercedes her best matches in AEW, save the Toni Storm match, right? So it's a catch-22. So you mean Statlander can beat Storm, but not Moné?
But then Moné can't beat Storm.
Right. So she beats Statlander. Do you see the catch-22 in all of this? It's a really challenging space. And so for Chris, it's a must-win for Chris Statlander, because Statlander can't prove that she's the real women's world champion if she can't beat both Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné.
Right.
That's the hill that she's got to climb. But for Mercedes, if she doesn't win the world championship, then we have to side-eye all 12 of these belts.
Right. But I say what I say because, in my mind, as you just said, I think it's more important for Statlander to get that win
Yes.
because she's lost twice to Mercedes before.
Mhm.
She's just become the new AEW Women's Champion, and I feel as though as well, the wrestlers, the company, the bookers, and all the rest of it, they're not dumb to what the fans think and all the rest of it. I think it's best to play into it, especially with Mercedes being a heel as well, because it kind of, she's parading with 12 belts and all the rest of it. But at the same time, it's like I'm the best mid-carder on the planet.
Yes.
you know
Yes. Yes.
so you can kind of see someone kind of working that angle, probably like a Miz when he held the
Mhm.
Intercontinental Championship, or so many other heels that have held
Yeah.
the Intercontinental Championships before, where they're talking
Yeah.
about being the best champion in WWE when you're the
Mhm.
Intercontinental Champion. And
Mhm.
I feel as though that's the way they should go with it.
Mhm.
So Mercedes has another chance, doesn't win the big one, and then we get people questioning even more whether she can, and challengers getting more confident they can probably beat her now, and maybe
Mhm.
that comes with a loss eventually, maybe 3 or 4 months down the line, however long it is. But then we get some kind of downfall, and either in between her downfall she wins the championship, or at the end of it she wins the championship, something like that. But I
Mhm.
don't think we need to see Mercedes Moné with 15, 20 belts that
Mhm.
includes the AEW World Championship, Women's World
Mhm.
Championship. I don't
Mhm.
think that should be the vision, or the image that we see. I think I think it helps her as well in her quest, or what she said her quest was, in terms of
Mhm.
joining AEW and building the division and building women's wrestling, and for her to put over Statlander, which is then detrimental to her in the eyes of many. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's still her holding the championship, and boasting and parading that she still has 12 championships, and she's still this and she's still that. When we're looking at her thinking, yeah, but you can't win the big one, mate. So stop talking. But I think
Mhm.
that's part of the the joy of it, the fun of it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what it needs to be. On the other hand, if she does win, the backlash that we're getting now is
Right.
gonna be times 15, and I say 15
Mhm.
because of how many belts.
Mhm. Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
whoa, Chris Statlander just won it. She won it
Mhm.
shockingly, but you've only
Mhm.
put it. So you're telling me AEW have put it on her just for her to lose to Mercedes, in order to also questioning, protecting Tony Storm from losing to Mercedes. We'll get all of that. So I think the best option would be for Mercedes to lose to Chris Statlander, for sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I don't want to ask the question that way, so I'll just make the statement and say that I think um of all of these championships that she has won, um, you know, perhaps, and this could be a really far-fetched statement, so guys, forgive me if you think it is, but perhaps the most mm, unnecessary, I almost use
Mm.
another term, but perhaps the most unnecessary of those wins is her winning the interim Ring of Honor Women's World Television Championship.
Let's
Like,
get into it.
oh. So, um, of course, as is the custom in the AEW Ring of Honor universe, if a champion is injured, we don't take the title off of them. No,
Mm-mm,
we just
mm-mm,
have an interim champion that stands
mm-hmm,
in the proverbial gap until
mm-hmm.
they're willing and able to return. Far different than what we saw last night for the WWE and their
Right,
World Heavyweight Championship.
right.
So Mina Shirakawa won the interim Ring of Honor Women's World Television Championship a few months back, replacing the injured Red Velvet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, apparently, she comes out to answer this challenge to any champion that happens at Wrestle Dream from Mercedes Moné. somehow I don't know how or why the Ring of Honor Women's Championship or TV Championship ended up on the line and not the TBS one, but another story for another day. Mercedes wins. So what does this mean, right? Like, you know, does it mean we're going to eventually get a showdown between her and Red Velvet? Well, if you're paying attention to the socials, Red Velvet just had surgery. You know, Red Velvet's not going to be back for a while. You know, so there's that. What on earth does Mercedes Moné do for the Ring of Honor women's division? And again, it's the television championship. Perhaps there's the thought that Mercedes Moné will bring more eyes behind the Ring of Honor paywall.
Possible.
Maybe not.
Maybe not the paywall, but yeah, highlights on YouTube. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, I also don't see Mercedes Moné showing up on Ring of Honor on a weekly basis defending that television championship. So this is just one of those moves. I get for the independents, you know, that they get to bring her in. She's a great draw. Now the world is talking about this independent promotion. I get that. You know, by the way, I think we mentioned this time last month that Mercedes had her eyes on the Ashe Women's Championship, which wouldn't surprise me if her eyes are still on that championship. But with that said, I understand why in these independent spaces that's the case. But for Ring of Honor, I don't understand. I don't understand. So, you know, where that goes is wild to me. And again, why she's winning the interim television championship and not fighting for the Ring of Honor World Championship is another thing that just things you just don't understand.
But this is why, for me, while the gap the gap between AEW and Ring of Honor, and we're always talking about that on here. But this is why, for me, it adds to this whole thing of Mercedes boasting about having as many championships as she does, but none of them are the big one. I think this is why I think they should play into that a lot more, or going forward. Going back to the championship itself and what it does for Ring of Honor, it's not going to do a thing. Because she's not going to go on Ring of Honor to defend it. If she ever does defend it, it's going to be on AEW TV. Right. It's and she'll have matches against a Tekla and a Sky Blue and a Queen Aminata and names like that as well, which is good for them. Them being on TV, them having matches showcasing who they are and reminding us of who they are and keeping them relevant in that respect. But for Ring of Honor, the brand itself, it doesn't do anything. We've seen it in the past. We've mentioned it so many times. We've seen the likes of a Chris Jericho, Claudio Castagnoli, and everyone else that's held the men's world championship. Even Bandido, he's had some great matches. He's had some great matches. Let's not get it twisted. But at the same time, what has it done for Ring of Honor itself? Has the subscriptions gone up? I doubt it. Has the brand been? Do we talk about the brand more? No, we don't. We're talking about Bandido in a tag team more than Bandido as a Ring of Honor champion.
Absolutely.
So we've already seen that this whole thing doesn't work, and not understanding why they do it in the first place. Because even when they do it, it's not like they push it towards it being about Ring of Honor. It doesn't do anything, especially with the men's one. And even with the women's, we've talked about Athena however many times, record breaking over 1,000 days, all of that stuff. But, she was the only thing that was relevant and is still relevant on Ring of Honor. But then whenever she was on AEW TV, is the only time she's ever lost.
True.
So you're like, so what are we doing here? The Ring of Honor AEW disassociation is just ridiculous, and have just made it worse. And I don't understand why they even bothered with it. But that's where the problem lies with this now. It just feels like it is another reason to just add a number to the amount of belts that she has, which doesn't do anything. And it's interesting to see how different it hits with Mercedes winning that title compared to an independence. And I think the biggest difference comes with the fact that the independents, most of these independents, they're not having weekly shows. They're having monthly, bi-monthly shows. So when a Mercedes does turn up, it's, people are spending their money, buying tickets to get there and all the rest of it. Whereas with Ring of Honor, that's not going to happen.
I had this thought, and I wasn't going to say it, but it's back, so I think I will. I'm almost likening some of these title wins to padding Goldberg's undefeated streak. Like, so we were just putting him in there against people to get him to 100-0, so that when he won the U.S. title and he won the world title, he could be the only undefeated man. You had 100 wins leading up to it. But who did he fight? Who did he beat? How significant was it? And so I think that's what we have going on right now with Mercedes Moné. I don't know what the end goal is. If the end goal is to try to present her as the greatest women's wrestler of all time, and we think that the proliferation of championships is what's going to do it, then maybe we've got the equation wrong. Because, and this lends itself to another discussion for another day, but I think we're in a weird space in pro wrestling where we have to have champions with multiple titles, whether it's Bandito with the tag titles and the world title for Ring of Honor, whether it's right now Dirty Dom with the AAA mega title and the Intercontinental Championship, or of course 12 belts Moné. Anytime there's more than one championship on a particular wrestler, the championships themselves get diluted. Because I can only focus on one piece of gold at a time. I can only focus on one trinket at a time. It's like you wearing all of these accessories. You got gold chains, and your hands are full of rings, and you got things going up and down your arm. Okay, so what am I focusing on? Because right now it's just all noise. And my fear right now is whatever the goal was for Mercedes Moné once she left WWE, I don't know what it is. Because I think this belt collector thing has actually done more harm than good, as opposed to her winning the TBS championship, being the longest reigning TBS champion, having great banger matches, and we go, she focused on that title, she won it. Or relinquishing that and then becoming the AEW Women's World Champion and doing that, but instead holding 12 titles. We know you're not going to all 12 of these places to defend them on a regular basis. We know that, and so I'm thinking that this quest to win all of these championships to prove her as the greatest women's wrestler alive could be backfiring.
And that's what it is. That's the problem. And as much as, whether people, fans and wrestlers, discredit or devalue the PWI system, for example, it makes sense, because if we rank Mercedes for against other women and whatnot, she's not really gonna make boost major points from these titles, because we're looking at the prestigiousness of the title, the prestigiousness of the people that she's defeated, how many times she's defended it, all that kind of thing, and it's not high value, and unfortunately that's the problem. If she was here, there, and everywhere and defending it a number of times, even if the competition wasn't the greatest, even just a number of times would make a difference. So you look at Leon Slater, for example. You mentioned that he was at Arche. He's defending his X Division championship there. He's done it at I believe House of Glory. If it hasn't happened already, it's going to. He's got a match on NXT tonight. You know, he's here, there, and everywhere with that one title, and it's that's making the difference. It's not the fact that he's got 3, 4, 5 titles. It's the fact that he's got one title and he's going here, there, and everywhere. So it's not about unfortunately, it's not about the number of titles, and that's the problem that we have. So it's a shame that it is how it is, but as well, you know, there's still some positives to it, as we mentioned. You know, the gate receipts for these indie shows and stuff like that. But is it for the women's division, or is it for Mercedes, or is it for the promotion? It's hard to decide on which one it is, and it's a little bit more about Mercedes, or it looks as though it's a little bit more about Mercedes, and that's not really what you want her legacy to be. But it's become that already to most people. But this is why, again, for me, the answer to it, or a way to soften the blow, so to speak, is for her to play on it. You know, it just feels as though she thinks she's the greatest, but without it being obvious that we all kind of know that she's not. So it's a very tough one. It's a major dilemma. It's a major dilemma with the whole thing. But I think the best way is for her to lose to Chris Statlander whenever we get, you know, their clash. It's a very, very, very interesting one. In terms of, you know, the ladies within AEW, Ring of Honor. Who is there that she does lose to, however long it takes, but who is there that she does lose to, whether it be the TBS, well, it is only the TBS or the ROH TV?
Yeah, you know, I think we alluded to the answer earlier, Willow Nightingale. You know, if you want to talk about finishing stories, story arcs, you know, all of those kinds of things, who is it more fitting than Willow Nightingale, who never got a rematch for the TBS championship, you know, has not gotten an opportunity at it or the world championship. So it's like, that makes a lot of sense. Queen Aminata is another thought once you get her out of this space with, you know, Tekla or whatever. There's a thought of Jamie Hayter, who could be also a great one. So I think we've got, this is not the case where there's a shortage of women who could actually beat Mercedes in AEW. You know, we just named 3 easily that could do that. You could make an argument. I don't know that Toni Storm would fight for the TBS championship, but Toni Storm has already won that. I think Athena, you know, I still say, you know, since we're having Ring of Honor champions hold AEW titles anyway, why not have her hold the TBS championship? It only makes sense. So I think, you know, those 4 women easily could be the ones to take one of those titles off of Mercedes Moné.
Yeah, I mean, we go back to, you know, when we had that whole thing with Mercedes, Athena, Toni Storm, you know, we were saying, and Mina Shirakawa was kind of in the mix as well. You know, we were saying the best option, if we were going to put the belt on Mercedes or the AEW Women's Championship on Mercedes, it would have been better for her to lose it, the TBS first, and then win the big one. And I still feel as though that should, going back and in hindsight more than anything, that should have been the play. I think it would have made a lot more sense. We wouldn't have this issue right now. Even with her, she probably still could have had, you know, all these belts, but her having the World Championship but not the TBS would have made all of this make a little bit more sense. It would have felt a little bit better in that respect. And I think, again, that should still be what they do moving forward. It's a shame to say it's more detrimental to the women's division than it is a good thing. And that's but it's not just the Mercedes issue. It's more to do with the Ring of Honor AEW issue.
Yes.
On top of the Mercedes issue as well. It's a tough one. It's a very tough one. It's nice to see that Mercedes is here, there, and everywhere, or occasionally here, there, and everywhere in the world, and achieving those goals that she set for herself and stuff like that. But it's all becoming a bit too far fetched, and it's like you said with this whole thing of people having more than one championship. We see it. You mentioned Dirty Dom, for example. Even a Sol Ruka.
Right.
I think they should have done a thing where Lainey Reed beat her for the Speed Championship and actually have Lainey Reed win the championship, and even then join Fatal Attraction. Fatal Attraction.
Influence. Sorry.
Fatal Attraction is the movie.
It's the movie.
But so her holding both titles kind of doesn't make it's a good look, but it doesn't make sense. Like it's not needed. Should I say?
And then fighting for the tag titles over the weekend, like
that's wow. That's wow. What are we doing? It's almost like we don't know what to do with people when there's a plethora of women,
right?
That you could have put in so many different spots and so many different spaces who would have done the job, who are good enough. It's not just a numbers thing; they are actually all good enough to be in that space. Yes. So I don't get what the thinking is. If I'm honest, with this multiple championship thing, because even with Takeshita, I think he won is now the IWGP World Champion, and then fighting for the AEW Tag Team Championships.
Well, I mean, him and Okada, both champions,
fighting like what are we doing? Like what are we doing? Like what are we doing?
I don't understand it. I really, really don't.
It's annoying, and I get the best of the best, and there's truth in it, and we see in the real world or in real life sports, however you want to put it, obviously we see boxing champions who have multiple titles and stuff, but at the same time they put all of those on the line at the same time as well.
Right.
You know what I mean? And in a world where it is scripted and you can write the story yourself, it's like, okay, let's write the story for other people as well as these guys. So it's a tough space to be, man. It's difficult to see it's not difficult. I was going to say you see the good and the bad with all of it. Speaking of Sol Ruka, we mentioned that she fought for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships on SmackDown. Yes. This brings me to the topic of the SmackDown Women's Division on a whole. I read something not long before we came on air as well about the intentions with the SmackDown Women's Division, mainly because of the lack of Bianca Belair. So we've had no Bianca Belair for a while. She since WrestleMania 41, back in April. A finger injury. It sounds very small, but it is a very awkward type of injury in the sense where there's no single surgery or there's no, there's no. It's kind of just allow the body to heal. If it goes wrong, you have to wait a little bit longer, and So she's been out for a lot longer than expected. And this is why we're seeing the likes of Sol Ruka Rosario coming through. We're seeing. Oh gosh, I forgot her name. You just entered. Oh my god, I had it in my head. It's gone. But she was Blake Monroe. There we go.
Yes, Blake Monroe. Yes.
Wow. She was in the crowd.
On the brain.
It is. She was in the crowd, and could be making an appearance on SmackDown as well in the ring, and all of this is happening. What do you feel as though the absence of Bianca is apparent, or is it just a numbers thing with the WWE's women's division on SmackDown specifically?
It feels like more. Certainly, Bianca Belair is missed. If you think about it, it's felt like she hasn't been there all year. It's hard to believe that she was there on the first quarter of the year. You almost forget that, and the first quarter of the year is where we got, this incredible moment with Bianca and Naomi and
Yep.
Jade
Yep.
that led to Naomi Jade for the in a one-on-one match at Mania, and then Bianca in the triple threat match that stole WrestleMania. But then we didn't see Bianca anymore. I think it's not just the absence of Bianca; it's also the absence of Jade Cargill. You know, we have a number of it's Naomi leaving SmackDown to go to Raw to win their world title, and then getting pregnant, right? So it's a number. So think about this. Last year, 2024, Naomi, Bianca, Jade are the big three on SmackDown, right?
Yeah.
You fast forward, you know, you have the thing around November Survivor Series with Jade. Naomi and Bianca win the tag titles. Mind you, Bianca and Jade were tag champions last year. Naomi and Bianca win. You know, fast forward, those three women who are powerhouses, who are major stars, none of them are on SmackDown right now. Not just are they not on SmackDown, but they're not really on our TVs at all. So how do you replace that star power? You know, Tiffany Stratton has been putting in work, but she needs opponents. Nia Jax isn't enough. You know, Jade was a good opponent, but I think the challenge with a Jade and a Tiffany Stratton is they're both still young in the business.
Right.
And so you still need somebody who's a bit of an elder statesman. You had Bayley, who was on SmackDown. She's over on Raw now. You know, there was a point where it felt like the SmackDown women's division was the dominant division. Io Sky was over there. Now they've moved a lot of those names over to Monday Night Raw, and they've not really adequately replaced them on the side of SmackDown. I mean, so you get like a B-Fab, but B-Fab isn't really wrestling. She's now managing. You've got, you know, what was going on with Chelsea Green and the Secret Hervis. And now you've got Piper Niven that's out. We're not seeing much of Chelsea Green these days, except for a backstage vignette here and there. So, you know, you have Mi Chin, who at one point was kind of in the real mix for the US title. Now she's not there. You have, you have Zelina Vega, who has gone from, you know, being a US champion to now being partnered with her husband on screen, right? So it's like we've literally seen a ton of the SmackDown women's division just literally pulling apart at the seams. So now it's a question of what do you have? You've got Julia as the US champion that's almost invisible, which is crazy when you think about it. Kiana James is at her side. Then you have obviously Tiffany Stratton as the world champion or the WWE women's champion, but who else? Who are they fighting? You know, so there's and if you just think about all the names I just mentioned, from Bayley to Bianca to Jade to Naomi, you know, these are all Io. These are all major names. You know, at one point you had Asuka and who was over on SmackDown. Now she's over on Raw. You know, so you've got the tag champions that are on SmackDown, but they can kind of go anywhere. But other than that, you've got your champions, but you don't have any challengers. So yeah, the SmackDown women's, and I don't know that we've all kind of sat down and thought about it, but I found this to be interesting that this year, all of the crown jewel champions came from Raw.
Correct.
Which is very rare. It usually gets split up or something like that. So it just says a lot about what's going on SmackDown, particularly on the women's side. So there's definitely a need for additional talent, and they've got plenty of it waiting over in NXT.
For sure. And I think that is, you know, that's going to be the play. As I said, you know, we've seen Solric and Zarya already make their way over there and, you know, appear a few times and stuff. But I think, you know, he realized the problem as well with all of that you said. I didn't even realize how bad it was until you just explained it all. But, you know, it's like they're ending up again in this space of champion versus champion. Because we mentioned Sol Ruka being a double champion, facing and then fighting for the tag team championships. And it looks as though we're going to get Tiffany Stratton versus Julia, which makes no sense to me. The whole reason why we have a Women's United States Championship is to give more opportunities to the women's division, not have champion versus champion on the same show.
Right.
So what are we doing here? Eventually and hopefully there'll be some way of bringing a Jordan Grace over, maybe. As I said, Blake Monroe's kind of showed her face a few times, but that was more to enhance the NXT story than it was to create something on SmackDown.
Sure.
And maybe eventually it will spill over at some point in some way. But and it's crazy how the problem happens, and sometimes it's possibly bad booking, but sometimes as well, and I think this is it for the most part, is just circumstances.
Sure.
A lot of it is just circumstances. Naomi went over to Raw because of mainly because of the Liv Morgan injury, and it made sense. It worked. Yeah. Of course, she's now pregnant. She's moved away from wrestling, and now we have Stephanie Vaquer as the champion and stuff like that. And she's doing a great job. And we've still got Io, Rhea, Asuka, Kyrie kind of making a resurgence as well in her role as well over there. But it's like on SmackDown, where are they? It's a shame. It's a shame. Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame. Here's an interesting question I've been meaning to ask you for a few weeks actually, but it's just come to mind again. We saw Stephanie Vaquer and Tiffany Stratton face each other at Crown Jewel. Stephanie Vaquer, of course, came out on top. If Naomi never went away, would she have still been champion when Crown Jewel came around? And if so, do you think she would have won the Crown Jewel Championship, assuming Tiffany Stratton would have been still on the other side?
I say yes. Here's why I say yes. I think the plan, and again, I'm just extrapolating from what I can see. It looked like there was more of a long game kind of plan for Stephanie Vaquer. Stephanie Vaquer, they know she's a star. Her winning the world championship should have happened on a larger stage. Yes. Should have happened at a Royal Rumble or likely even a WrestleMania. And so I think they were willing to walk that out because they had enough things to do that could have kept her occupied. But as and for all that one can say about the sport being scripted or not, what's not scripted is when injuries happen. What's not scripted is when pregnancy happens. What's not scripted is, Rhea Ripley getting a broken nose in Japan, like those kinds of things, Seth Rollins banging his shoulder up and, it's a contact sport, scripted or not. So when those kinds of things happen, for the integrity of the sport and the integrity of the championships, you have to have people ready to step in at a moment's notice. It's odd that it's happened like this so much lately in the WWE.
A lot.
I don't recall a period where we've had so many injuries or so many out of ring situations that have led to championships having to change hands, plans being changed, all of the like. So the question, would Naomi have been still the champion? I think she would have. I think she was going to get past Stephanie Vaquer at Clash in Paris. I think it was going to be by some sort of nefarious means to help tell us why we should proceed with caution. She would have certainly gotten through whoever they would have put at her at WrestlePalooza, and she would have definitely beaten Tiffany Stratton. There's already enough story connected to that in terms of why, but just think of the optics of how absolutely annoying Naomi would have been with that giant crown jewel championship. man, they would have been printing money with that. You hear me? Because she was on this upward trajectory that, you know, wrestlers only dream of. You try to plan it out and market it out, but, you know, it only happens when there's an organic connection. So I think she would have still been a champion, and the whole look of the WWE women's division would have been much different.
It's interesting, man. It's interesting. I feel the same way. I think it would have been. I'm not completely sure as to whether, you know, I believe it should have gone like that, but I'm not completely sure as to whether it would have. And I guess that's just me with my skepticism about, you know, WWE booking over what I want to see. It can be completely two different things. And also then what makes sense. Again, it can be two completely different things. But that would have made complete sense for a character like Naomi's to then have even more reason to boast and annoy us and be laughing every 2 seconds with that cackling that she was doing and all of that stuff. It would have just added to everything and given us so much more. But it's crazy to think, you know, you mentioned the big three before. And this time last year, we were talking about the big three and the possible WrestleMania match for next year, maybe, and, you know, the possibilities and the storylines and everything it could have been. To now think that all three are out of action. It feels so weird.
It's weird.
It feels so weird. It feels so weird. But again, it's not, thankfully, it's not down to storylines and them not having, you know, something for them and all that kind of stuff. It's injuries and circumstances, pregnancies and whatnot, life happening basically, which is a good thing. But yeah, hopefully we'll see some of the newer faces come through, you know, and hopefully in time, you know, Bianca comes back on top and back at her best as well. I do feel the void of a Bianca Belair not being around. You know, you have Rhea and Io on the other side, and adding Stephanie to that as well in terms of star power. But there's no one on SmackDown that has that. And with Alexa and Charlotte being in the tag team, while it's fun to see them and their dynamic, them as a tag team is not the same as them fighting for a world championship or having a world championship. So yeah, the star power in the women's division on SmackDown is just a little bit less, and it's a shame. But we'll see what happens with that. Going back to NXT. You know, we saw Ricky Saints come out at the start of last week's show. Very much, of course, upset with Trick Williams for leaving him during the TNA NXT showdown, Survivor Series match for the men. But he was the one that opened up the challenge to Trick Williams for the NXT Championship. We know that they're going to have a match at Halloween Havoc. I believe, you know, I'm sure we talked about this and the possibility of this last week, the possible outcomes and whatnot. But do you think that the way it was done was a good way? Could there have been a better way to do it at all?
It's interesting. You know, Trick Williams comes off the heels of losing his TNA World Championship, and then 2 days later is immediately mentioned in the NXT Championship picture. I don't know. I mean, I guess on one hand, you know, you have Ricky Saints as a fighting champion. He's calling his shot, deciding who he wants to fight and that type of thing. On the other hand, one could argue, okay, well, what did Trick do to earn a title shot, particularly after losing a world championship? Should he be, you know, considered for a rematch for the TNA World Championship? What does all of this mean? So it's again, you know, the interesting things in wrestling, right? You talk about automatic rematches for championships. You know, we have not seen that given to Obafemi. And there's a whole conversation to be had about, you know, a live event, not this past weekend, but the weekend prior, where it was him and Omos coming face to face. And it's like, wow, we didn't even know we needed that. But neither of them are on television right now. So it's like, what's happening?
Right.
I think if anything, you know, Trick Williams kind of being thrown in this main event said a couple of things. Number one, we did not have much time to build for a Halloween Havoc story, considering that Halloween Havoc is this Saturday, which is nuts. So, you know, they spent so much time building the NXT versus TNA showdown situation that it's like Halloween Havoc was completely forgotten about, which there's an argument to be made that perhaps we have too many premium live events or major events happening where we can't focus on them, much like all of these championships that Mercedes has. Like you when there's too many, then they all are diluted in terms of importance.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, you throw Trick Williams in there in a title match to hopefully, you know, you could just insert him. There's not a massive story. The biggest story you have is he walked out on Team NXT. You'd figure that more than Ricky Saints would be upset about that. But it just seems like it's Ricky Saints. So it'll be a good match because, you know, Trick Williams has proven himself to be a star. I imagine this is probably the Trick Williams send-off, where he's finally ready to go to Raw or SmackDown and do his thing there. So I think if anything, that's likely what this is. Saints retains, you know, we get a good send-off for Trick, and maybe, just maybe, you know, we get Trick Mellow Gang on SmackDown.
That was going to be my next question. You know, does it make sense for him to be on SmackDown, one where there is a gap in talent? It's not just the women's division as much as that's what we talked about. And of course, you know, you've got the whole thing with Mello and Miz happening. You know, does Trick insert himself in that? I don't think they can both be on the same show and not have some kind of correlation and communication and whatever else that we see happen on TV. Or does he, and here's another question actually, does he end up on Raw with the possibility of him ending up in the Vision? Because that's been talked about. As much as Austin Theory seems to be the main name, there is still other names like the Trick Williams. Once Carmelo Hayes, I think it kind of still has come around because they're talking about still having a third member even without Seth Rollins being there. I think an Obafemi has been mentioned as well, but I wouldn't want to see that at all. But yeah, any of those three, Trick, Theory, Mello. For me, Mello kind of doesn't really fit it. So Theory or Trick, either one works for me.
I would agree with you. I think one of the challenges you have with a Mello right now is him breaking away from Miz is to finally get him to be viewed as a great solo star.
Right.
To pair him again in another tag team situation would again just dilute our view of Carmelo Hayes. And it's long overdue for us to see him as the star that he currently is. I like the idea of Trick in the Vision. And here's why I like it. For one, you could make an argument that you would then have 3 former NXT champions in some degree, with Braun being a multi-time champion, with Bronson Reed being a former NXT North American champion, Trick holding all the championships that he's held. The resume for all 3 of them makes this concept of the Vision very believable.
For sure.
You know, very believable. All of them are as the future of the business. I think Trick would also greatly benefit from the Oracle. Paul Heyman getting to be in Trick Williams' ear, helping to refine Trick even more. Oh man, oh man, oh man. The moments you can have. And then I think it would create for a unique bit of chemistry, because you've got Braun Breaker, who is definitely just kind of the loose cannon of sorts. You've got the big giant muscle of Bronson Reed, But now you've got the suave, smooth talking, charismatic element, which would be Trick. You could argue that that's what Seth was. Seth was the charismatic eye candy, with the over the top outfits. He was the one that was always talking. You need that. Right now they don't have a talker outside of Heyman. So you put Trick in there as the talker. He's going to do that way better than Austin Theory will. He'll do that, I think, even better than Carmelo Hayes will, because the look that Trick has is much more in sync with both the vision and where WWE tends to go. So, yeah, Trick with the vision, and you now have somebody else who they'll chant for. That's what's so unique about this vision situation. They're singing Seth's song while booing him out of the building. It's crazy. So they're barking for Braun Breaker while he's spearing Jey Uso.
Right.
So now you get them whoop that Trick while Trick's doing something that, to me, it makes all the sense in the world. Print all of that money. Put Trick Williams with the vision immediately.
Trust me, that would be phenomenal. And as you said, the look, the talk on the mic, all the rest of it. And I think even on top of that, the momentum from his TNA championship run as well, to then throw him in that space too. As you said, the resumes of all three men from NXT, all being talked about as the future of the business. That's the whole point of the group. It would just make sense, and it adds to the dynamic of, we think, every time we see a faction put together, straight away the first thing we're thinking is who's going to be the one to break out, who's going to turn on who, blah blah blah. So now it's not just a Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed situation where we're thinking, okay, Bronson Reed's probably going to turn on Breaker because he's going to feel inadequate or something like that. Throw Trick Williams in there. It's a problem for everyone.
Yes.
It's a problem for everyone. And you also makes it harder for us to determine who the betrayer or who the one who's going to break out is going to be as well, which makes it a hell of a lot more interesting for us to watch as time goes on. So Trick in division works way better than an Austin Theory. I'm an Austin Theory fan, always have been. I want to see him do great. And I think it would help him if he was in that group. But if you compare him to, compare it to putting Trick in, Trick makes a hell of a lot more sense. And that, it would be phenomenal. So I'd rather see Trick on Raw, specifically in division, as opposed to him being on SmackDown, which would, fill a massive hole that's on SmackDown. But then you've got the problem of, then having to pair him with Carmelo Hayes, which would be detrimental more than anything for Carmelo Hayes, in my eyes, at this current moment, at least anyway. Trick in the vision is, it makes a hell of a lot more sense. Let me touch on this one real quick before we get to Arshay. We saw the Hurt Syndicate and the Demand. Their war continues to go on. They've had another trios match. This time it was a street fight at Wrestle Dream, but also a number one contenders match for the AEW Trios Championship. Hurt Syndicate come out on top. And we know now that they'll be facing the Ups at some point. I'm not sure if that's been mentioned as to when and where yet, but we know it's going to happen. They're now the number one contenders. The issue I have straight away off the bat is now that the Ups are heels. The Hurt Syndicate kind of sit in this space of tweeners, a phrase that Mex doesn't really like to use, but that's what it is. Just the Ups becoming heels on its own feels a bit incorrect. There's sense made of it in terms of what Samoa Joe said the week before the Wrestle Dream match with Hangman Adam Page, kind of feeling as though he's taking all the credit for, or not, giving them credit for what they did for him, and stuff like that. So I get that part of it. But in terms of how many heels there are on the show and the dynamics of the teams and the blah, 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 how does this one play out with the Hurt Syndicate and the Ups?
I think it gets really interesting. You know, the Hurt Syndicate, I think, have always supposed to have been heels, but never really were.
Never ever.
Because the people have just loved them, and then they've been so dominant. It kind of gives me Road Warrior vibes, you know, like we're supposed to not like you, but you're so tough, and we like that, and you're cool, and so we're gonna rock with you. You know, even their match with the Demand, their war with the Demand, it's technically 2 heel teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we rock with it. I think it speaks to the fact that there are not enough faces in AEW. Certainly not in a trios capacity. It seems as though all of their teams and trios that are faces are all thrown together. I mean, you look at their current tag team champions, literally they were a one-shot deal that just happened to work. So it's interesting. I mean, they've had to go back and dig up Jurassic Express for face tag teams. Like that's just wild to me, you know. How this works, I think it's going to be a very physical match. You know, you look at Shibata, and you look at Powerhouse Hobbs, and of course Samoa Joe against the Hurt Syndicate. Sheesh, that's going to be a very physical match. It's hard to call because one would think, okay, Hurt Syndicate gets another championship, but the Ops, which is another thrown together team, have really found their way. And there's something that we believe in with them. So it's hard to call. I think it's a pick 'em. I think it's really a pick 'em. I think a lot will depend on Samoa Joe and on MVP, because whether they like it or not, of the 3, MVP is the brains, perhaps, but certainly physically could be considered the weakest link in that particular chain. And if they're able to isolate him and put him in a situation, the Ops could end up winning. I'd love to see the Hurt Syndicate win this just because it's what we like. But I'm a fan of the Ops. I like what they do. So yeah, I think either one, I think it's just going to make for a great match and a great series of matches.
I feel as though, you know, we're going to get, I think we're in this space where we're almost getting to a space where there's no such thing as a heel or face.
Agreed.
We're starting to see that happen. I don't think we'll ever get to that because I think wrestling in general needs that. We need the good guy, bad guy story or the foundation of that at least.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, you know, when we're talking about division, you know, we're talking about if Trick Williams joined the group, they would still be shouting, "Whoop that Trick!" They've been doing that for his whole TNA run as a heel.
Right.
You know, with Braun Breaker, with Seth Rollins, the same thing. With the Hurt Syndicate, we're seeing a very similar thing. All in all, they are a heel team, but I think we're probably pushing them towards being a bit more of a face team, but with you know the toughness and all the rest of it that we see. So I think we're going to get that you know pushed a little bit more. What I love, the interesting part of this is a kind of almost like a bit of a reunion type, even though kind of on opposite sides, but of the BDC, the Beatdown crew from TNA with Samoa Joe. MVP wants Bobby Lashley a part of the team as well, and we're going to see that. In terms of the match and the outcome, I feel as though the one thing that is definite is that the Demand are going to get involved.
Yeah.
I think that's definite. That's going to happen. I think that's going to be detrimental to the Hurt Syndicate. We're then going to see a rubber match between the two because when they've done their trios thing, you know, it's one each at the moment. So I think that's what will happen with this match specifically. I feel as though it makes more sense for the Demand to then go on and beat the Ups. Again, it's 2 heel teams, so that probably doesn't make much sense. But in terms of who would benefit a little bit more, I want to see benefit more is the Demand, Ricochet, and the Gates of Agony. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Like I said, the dynamic of the Ups is different now. How that plays out, we'll see how that plays out over the next few weeks. You know, I'm gonna say this too. Actually,
Yeah.
Jeffrey Ryman, but I hate the Demand name. I can't lie. I'm not a fan of it either. But they make it work. They make it work. Put it that way. They make it work, but it's not the best name. Probably something else could have been better. I don't know what, but something else could have been better. It's usually Bobby Lashley ending up with names of groups that just don't work. But this time it's Ricochet. Oh well. Moving away from all things WWE, from all things AEW, and let's talk about Arche. We had Arche close to midnight over the weekend. As you said earlier at the start of the show, history was made. Shenanigans happened. All sorts of crazy stuff, as well as cryptic messages from certain champions too. Gerard, you were there in the flesh, saw it all play out. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so a lot went down this weekend as Ashe Wrestling presented close to midnight. As we mentioned, 4 championships up for grabs. But before we get there was a number 1 contenders match for the Ashe Wrestling Men's Championship. LeBron Cozone, Cedric Alexander, just an absolutely brilliant match that went the initial time limit. They had 5 more minutes added, and it went to that time limit as well. So,
Dark State didn't get involved, no?
Dark State did not get involved. The lights did not go out. It's really amazing how that happened, you know? So the commissioner was forced to make a decision and had decided that both men would be the number 1 contender to get a shot at the championship in December. However, Cedric Alexander would then usher the following words. He would say, "That doesn't work for me, brother."
Oh, wow.
And so proceeded to say that he wanted his own individual shot, did not want to be lumped in a triple threat match. So he says, give the first shot to Cozone in December, and then I'll face the winner in February. So it looks like both LeBron Cozone and Cedric Alexander will get shots at the Ashe Wrestling Men's Championship. We'll talk about who the champion is in a little bit. Some other great matches. Maya World took on Savannah Evans, and that was a banger. Savannah Evans wins that match, only then to be challenged by Alexis Littlefoot, who is still upset about losing $5,000 after betting on Savannah Evans. It's a whole thing. They're going to meet at the 2-year anniversary show in December. Also, a very interesting thing. There was an interview with Yaya, the gifted one, who has had a rough go at it these last few months, ever since Return of the King, where he lost to Cedric Alexander back in June. And so as he was sharing with me just kind of where his head was at, this music we had not heard before played, and out comes heavyweight hustle Calvin Tankman. Who says he's here for a fight, but not with Yaya. Ignores Yaya completely, and then talks directly to the camera as he wants to get his hands on the Pan-African World Champion, Bishop Khan. Yeah, it's wild. Needless to say, Yaya did not take too kindly to being ignored. And so those two kind of got into it. I did my best to pull them apart. I don't like being in between two giants like that. But, you know, we do what we got to do. Now, speaking of Khan, that name would show up because we had a tag team title match as we crowned the inaugural Ashe Wrestling Men's Tag Team Champions. It saw the team of TME, that's Duke Davis and Gannon Jones Jr., monster tag team, taking on the Ugly Gang. And if you haven't seen the clips of the end of this match, the second we saw it, we were backstage all screaming highlight reel, because this crazy throw that TME did to Jordan Holt of Ugly Gang was just, I mean, you have to see it to believe it. TME wins the tag team championships, but then a messenger comes out, and the messenger has a piece of paper, hands it to TME, and the piece of paper says, Khan has spoken. Suddenly, TME attacks Ugly Gang. They leave the ring with this gentleman, this messenger of Khan, and now we wonder what is going on between TME and Bishop Khan.
That visual.
Visual. Gosh.
Whoa.
Insane. And speaking of insane, there's the TNA X Division Championship match, originally supposed to be a 5-person scramble that involved the champion Leon Slater. You had, Fast as Hell Ian Maxwell, SoFly Manny Lowe, and The Audacity. That's Treehouse Lee and Saeed Al-Sabah. Well, as a result of a tag team match that happened during the pre-show, 2 more men were added to that match, and that was Ashton Starr and Zamir Zuriel. 7 men battling for the X Division Championship. It was wild. It was crazy. It was filled with just amazing moments and spots. And at the end of the day, Leon Slater retains with that unbelievable Swanton 450 to retain the X Division Championship. In our semi-main event, we saw the inaugural defense of the Ashe Wrestling Women's Championship. Charity King getting a big win over Aaliyah James. Though something's happening with Aaliyah James. She kind of started taking some things personal in that match. And I'm interested to see where all of that is going to go with Aaliyah James. Of course, the night ends with the long-awaited title match, a 5-year feud seemingly coming to a head as the champion, the Ashe Wrestling Men's Champion, Darius Carter, defends against Billy Dixon. Now, Billy Dixon earned this title shot, and it seemed as though everything was going to come to a head. Darius Carter went to go for a big boot there in the corner. He went to hit Billy Dixon. Dixon moves out of the way, and all of a sudden, the referee gets knocked out. Referee's knocked out. We have a new referee that comes in. There's a distraction that happens. Darius Carter had brought the belt in to hit Billy Dixon. That wasn't allowed to happen. The referee was distracted. Billy Dixon hits Darius Carter with the belt. The referee doesn't see it. Nobody sees it. The referee counts to 3. The announcement is made. We have a new champion. Everybody comes out of the back. We flood the ring. I mean, it's a beautiful moment there for Billy Dixon, the new Ashe Wrestling Men's Champion, only for the original ref to have a conference with the new ref and say that she actually saw Billy Dixon hit Darius Carter with the championship and forced a reversal of the decision. Still very controversial. I've got questions. A lot of people have questions. My big question is, I thought the referee's decision was final. And so I even went onto the socials and in expressing my just concern. Like, I thought the referee's decision was final. And I was met with, well, which referee's decision?
Oh, good question, though.
The first referee or the second referee? Good
question, though.
I didn't know there was a hierarchy in all of that. Needless to say, arguably one of the most controversial moments in our company's history. Somehow, some way, Darius Carter leaves with the Ashe Wrestling Men's Championship, even though he got pinned, even though he lost the title. It's wild. I can't imagine that there wouldn't be some sort of protest or something from Billy Dixon. But yeah, it was a wild, wild night. You need to go back and check it out in its entirety at AsheWrestling.com. And in case you haven't heard, Ashe Wrestling has launched a Patreon page, your opportunity to really get invested in what Ashe is doing. And by doing that, it also would include, your opportunity to check out the live shows as well. So go ahead, check out Patreon or check out Ashe Wrestling's Patreon page. Just go to AsheWrestling.com. All the information is there as we gear up for our 2-year anniversary show on December the 6th, which will be headlined, as far as we know, with Darius Carter versus LeBron Cozone for the Ashe Wrestling Men's Championship.
and anything can happen in between.
Anything.
Wow. Oh man, that sounded like a whole 3 months of WWE in one show.
Yeah, right.
Like, whoa.
It was serious.
That sounds amazing.
Serious.
It sounds amazing. Yeah, here's a question for you actually. Was that the first time you've seen the Swanton 450 in the flesh?
No, I believe he attempted it at Ashe Vegas. And I think that's the first time I saw that. But I got to go back and I probably need to rewatch that match to see if he actually pulled it off, or if he just attempted it. But either way, it is a sight to behold. It is a sight to behold.
It's unreal. I remember seeing it way before the masses saw it, and I think it was about maybe 2 years ago, possibly 2 years ago. I think about 2 years ago, in London. And it was probably one of the second time I'd seen Leon Slater. First or second time. And he pulled it. I was like, wait, huh? And bearing in mind, this boy was about 18 at the time.
It's crazy.
It was just different. It's just different. It's just different. I'm excited for, as I said about the visual with Khan and TME by his side, the possibility of that. That is scary.
It is.
That's scary. Darius Carter needs to keep his eye on that.
Yes.
And not even Billy Dixon or Cedric Alexander or LeBron. Keep your eye on Khan and TME, because that is different. And everything that's happening elsewhere in the women's division, the new tag team championships. Ashe is always something to talk about after a show. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible. So if you haven't seen it, guys, check out Ashe. Is it AsheWrestling.com?
Yes, AsheWrestling.com.
AsheWrestling.com. And of course, before we end the show, Gerard, tell the people how they can find you in other spaces as well.
For sure. You can find me at Bonafide across all of the social spaces. That would be Instagram, X, TikTok, Facebook. Of course, we just finished an amazing show with Ashe Wrestling. This Sunday, got a big show with the Nightmare Factory that will be streamed live on the Nightmare Family YouTube channel. So that's, I think, at 6 p.m. Eastern, which would be like 11 p.m. BST and wherever else in the world. So you can check that out. I'll be doing commentary there. We're getting ready for a big show in November, the 7-year anniversary of Southern Honor on November 14th. So that should be a lot of fun. And then, of course, the 2-year anniversary for Ashe Wrestling on December 6th, and all sorts of other fun things in between there. Also, if you have not checked out my podcast, it's a completely separate podcast away from wrestling. You can hear other things that are going on with me there. It's called Bonafide Conversations. We launched another episode today that is available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, as part of the Bonafide Podcast Network, would love for you guys to check it out and let me know what you think.
Brilliant stuff. And of course, you can find me, a Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, on Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram. I've been a little bit quiet, a few things going on, a few transitions in this world, but it's good stuff. Don't worry, I'm not talking about struggling with life. But, you know, there'll be some more stuff I'll be back on posting very, very soon. So find me there. And of course, if you never see anything posted, you will always find me right here every Tuesday on the Black Wrestling Alliance YouTube channel on WrstlXtra with Gerard Bonner. Occasionally our guy Mex, of course, when he has the time for us, because he's such a busy guy, family man, busy man, doing great things as well out in the wrestling world. Thanks everyone that joined us on the live. Always Jeffrey Reimer, our friend here, Mr. Courtney Rice as well, and a few other faces that we see quite often. And guys, we will see you again next time. See you later.